Hello everyone and welcome to YMCA of San Francisco's Youth Classes for All. My name is Alex and today I'm going to be guiding you through a really fun Halloween craft since Halloween is just around the corner and I know we're going to want to do some extra decorating for our homes. Today we are going to learn how to make a watercolor spider web craft. The supplies that you will need are a glass of water for your paintbrush, some watercolors. I have a super messy watercolor tin today, a piece of paper. I have a really big piece of paper today just so you can see it extra clearly, but you can use any kind of paper that you want. Some crayons. You can do any color crayon if you want to. White might be really cool to try, yellow. Today I'm going to be using black, some pink, and some red just to make sure that you can see it from your screen. A paintbrush, a paper towel, and for some added effects, we're going to have some salt. So if you have any thick grained salt, we're going to use that today. So feel free to follow along with me today, or if you just want to watch and try it again later at your own time, that's fine too. All right, let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to pick our crayon color. So if you're making this from home, you can use a white crayon, which can add kind of a mysterious effect to your artwork because you can't see your white crayon until you add that watercolor over top. So today I think I'm going to make my spider web pink or pinkish purple. And the first thing that we're going to do in making our spider web is we're going to start to draw some straight lines or diagonal lines, crazy lines across our whole paper. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with the top of my paper, one corner. I'm going to take my crayon and draw all the way across diagonally from one corner to the other. So it'll look like this. Okay? All right. And to make it even, I'm going to do the same thing from the other side. So starting at one corner and bringing it all the way across to the opposite corner. So now we have a big X in our paper. And don't worry if your lines aren't perfectly straight. If you want them to be perfectly straight, you can get a straight edge or a ruler to make them really, really straight for you moving forward. But today, spider webs aren't always perfect, although they look so perfect outside. There's always a little kink in the web or some crooked lines or some missing parts. So today we're just going to do our best to make it as pretty as we want it to be. So the next piece that we're going to do is we're going to draw a line right through the middle of our paper. So from one end to the other, and making sure that that line goes right through that X that we just made, right in the middle. So our paper should now look like this. All right. And we're going to repeat that step, but we're going to go vertical. So we're going to go from the top to the bottom of our paper, taking that same crayon. If you don't want to use the same color, you can mix it up and use all kinds of different colors. But just making sure that we're using either a crayon or a pastel today in making our craft. So what I mentioned before, we're going to take our crayon and draw a line from the middle of the top all the way down to the bottom of our paper. So now we should have what looks kind of like a big snowflake, or if you were going to make just a simple snowflake. Now you can stop here and start with the next step in creating those links to our web lines, but I'm going to add some extra lines to give me a little bit more of a challenge today. So if you want to join me in this part, you can add a few more lines in between the lines that you just made. So I'm going to pick right here, this section right here, to go from one end to the other to fill in that blank space. So I'm going to take my crayon and making sure I'm still going through the middle of my paper all the way across. So I just drew that line from the top of here all the way to the bottom to fill that little space in between those lines. I'm going to repeat that same step on the other side. making sure to go all the way through the middle of our web like that. And I think I'm pretty happy with the amount of lines that I started with. If you wanted to add more, you can find some more blank spaces to draw your lines through to the other side. But today, I think I'm perfectly happy with the amount of lines that we have. And now here comes the fun part in creating a web look to our art piece today. So we started with pink. I might change it up just to be a little creative and different today. So I'm going to take a red crayon, and what we're going to do next is we're going to create links between each of these little lines that we made all the way around. So you can start from the outside in, but today we're going to start from the inside out, just to watch our spider web grow and grow and grow right before our eyes. So take your crayon, any color that you want. And what we're going to do first, and I'm going to zoom into this in a little bit to show you, but we're going to create what look like little smiley face lines, so little half circle lines from one line to the other. So I'm going to start with one of these guys here, and I'm going to go close enough to the middle, but not way to the middle of the point here, but I'm going to go as close as I can to the middle. And I'm going to make a little loop that looks kind of like a smiley face connecting one line to the other. And I'm going to do one more so you can see what that loop looks like. So if you can see on your screen, we're going to make little loops to connect our lines. I'm going to bring it in closer so you can see it better. So right in the middle, we're going to make these little loops, or half circles, or smiley faces, connecting each line together. And you're going to continue that all the way around. So this is going to take some time and maybe some practice. So take your time with it. You don't have to rush or keep up with me today. I'm going to keep it really slow and simple for today so that we can all follow along. So I'm going to continue those little smiley faces or semicircles all the way around, the same distance from the center as the other lines that we started with. So when you're done, you should have now a connected line with your little web starting to form from the middle. Okay? And now we're going to create another circle, and I'm going to just give myself some space from that first half circle that we made. So I'm going to give myself about the tip of my finger's length away from it. And I'm going to start my next round of smiley face half circle curves around. So we're going to connect them all the way around between each line so that there's a dip between each of these purple lines that I made before. So now we have our second line created. And now, remembering to put another space, you can even make your spaces bigger as it gets bigger around you. If you want them really close together, you can do that. It just might take a little bit longer to really get to that outside that you want to reach. And I'm going to keep on connecting till I reach the other side. And then I'm going to keep on going. So once I create another circle, we're going to keep going farther and farther out on our web. And you kind of get the swing of it after a while. It just kind of flows after you've done your first few. So once you get some practice in, it becomes easier and easier to make your spider web. So right now, this is what mine is starting to look like, and I'm going to create some more lines all the way around. I might not go all the way out because I kind of like the look of just some empty space here to fill with what I want to fill with later. All right, so now I'm going to make another circle of smiley faces. And sometimes you might find that your lines aren't connecting after you go around in a circle, and it might be that you're widening your your lines as you go, and that's okay. You could just keep on going and making it bigger too, so it kind of looks like you're making a spiral of smiley faces around, which will still look beautiful at the end. So right now that's what's happening on my paper. It's kind of just continuing on. I'm not restarting a new circle. It just keeps growing as I make more spaces in between. And if you run out of space, you can still continue on. You can just skip those spaces. So I'll show you what I'm going to do once I run out of space on some of these areas when I still want to work on more. So I still have a bunch of space on this outer part on the sides, but as you can see, I'm running out of space up at the top. So I don't want to squeeze any more in because that won't look even with the other side. So what I'm going to do is when I'll start, I'm going to start probably last one up here and skip these spaces and continue on to the spaces that I want to fill up. So I'll show you exactly what I mean. I have some line to continue here, so I'm going to start right over here and then continuing on. And I'm running out of space here, so I'm going to do my last line here and then continue on the sides. And so I just ran out of space right here, and I don't want to continue filling in this spot, so I'm just going to skip these two spaces and create a line starting right over here. So skipping those two spots that I've run out of space, and I'm going to bring it in. And skipping those other two sides that I'm running out of space at, so skipping these two and continuing on around here. So skip a two, continue on until you think you are happy with your finished lines here. So if you feel like you can fill in any random spots that you might have missed, you can definitely do that. I'm going to add just a couple more lines right over here on the side, so that way I'm happy with the look of my spider web. And that's how we draw a spider web that starts from the center and works its way out. Some of you at home might already know how to make spider webs by starting from the corner out, and that's another technique that you can do that'll work perfectly well with this too. So any way that you like to draw your spider webs, you can do that at home and then add your own little swing to this craft. So what comes with spider webs normally in nature? I have my web, and I think I'm missing a couple other things, or maybe one big thing. I think I'm missing a giant spider. So if you're like me, I don't really like spiders that much, but I do love drawing them, and I love fake spiders, especially during Halloween. So I'm going to draw a spider on my web. And I'm going to take a black crayon and just find a spot anywhere on your web that you want to draw your spider on. So I'm going to pick this little side here, and I'm going to draw a big circle for its body. And I'm going to fill that in really well with the waxy crayon that we have. So these crayons that I'm using are these twistable crayons, so they might look a little different than the ones that you normally find in a box. But I assure you this is a crayon, and we're going to want to make sure we're using crayons because we're still going to want to see our beautiful spider web underneath our painting later. So I drew my big circle for the body of my spider, and then I'm going to draw 8 legs because that's how many legs spiders have, so 4 on each side. And I'm going to draw a little head. It's a smaller circle at the top. So you can make yours more cartoonish. You can add a face to your spider if you want to. Mine looks upside down, so I'm going to turn him the other way so you can see it properly. And I have my little spider here. You can put multiple spiders all over your web if you want to. Today I'm just going to leave one simple one, but feel free to add whatever you want. You can put little baby spiders around it, or you can make your spider bigger, or have more legs or more eyeballs if you want to. So that's exactly what I love to see in art, is people taking the time to add their own unique spin on their art piece. So feel free to add whatever you want to your spider web right now. All right. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get ready to start painting. So the reason we used crayon is because it has a real waxy finish to it. So if you touch it on your paper, you might feel that it feels really smooth. And it feels like if you were to touch a candle, like candle wax. So what that does is it helps make sure that crayon can still push through the paint that we're using, and we can still see it really well underneath watercolor or any paint that we paint over it. So that wax acts as a resistance to our watercolor. So if you want, you can go back over some of your lines and make sure that it's really thickly there. So that way the paint doesn't hide our beautiful lines. So I have some lines that are just a little bit dull, and I'm going to just go over them one more time to prepare for our painting. All right, just had a few. And it's okay if some of them disappear as we paint, but we just want to make sure we see most of our spider web. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our paintbrush, our watercolors, and our water. And the first thing that I would like us to do, and it might seem a little weird, but we're going to try this technique called wet on wet watercolor painting, which means we're going to get our watercolor paper wet first. So we're going to dip our paintbrush. So I still have a little bit of purple on here, but that's okay. We're going to dip our paintbrush into water first, not with any paint on it, and we're going to brush over some of the parts of our spider web. So if you see mine, I still have some purple on here, but yours would look really clear. So go ahead and get it really wet on just one little section. You can keep adding more water. And if you see what mine's already doing, since it's still purple from my last painting activity, you'll see that we're getting just a small section wet and ready to put some paint on top. So I put some wet purple tinted water on this section right here, but you can already see the reaction that the crayon has with it. It's resisting that paint, so it's kind of pushing through, so you can really see that crayon. So we're going to make sure it's really wet. I'm going to go over it really quickly, and then I'm going to pick whatever color is speaking to me right now. And I think I'm going to choose some yellow or orange color because that reminds me a lot of Halloween. So I'm dipping in, and you can even add a little bit more water, and you're going to paint right over that wet spot that you just painted on your paper. So if you have a thinner paper, you might see some wrinkling happening on your paper, and that's okay. Just make sure not to put too much water on top. So if you want to skip the wet on wet technique, if your paper's really thin, you can just go straight to painting. Just make sure that it's wet enough so that you can still see your crayon peeking through. So mine kind of mixed into like a golden brown color, but if you can tell, I'm going to bring it up closer so you can see. The part that I drew with crayon is showing really well right through the paint that I painted over it. So we're going to continue doing this all the way around with whatever colors that you want until we have a beautiful watercolor piece. So I'm going to go in with a new color, but still using that same wet technique. So if your paintbrush is a little dirty, you can use your paper towel on the side to kind of clean it off. If your paper is also feeling really wet, like you feel like you put too much water on there, you can use that same paper towel to dab right over your painting. So you can go, so say I put too much of this yellow, you can go ahead and press it on, and it will lift a lot of that color and that water that you put on to your paper. So I'm going to go in with some blues and purples right now, because those also remind me of Halloween, especially purple. And I'm going to go over some of that dull purple that I put in before so that it goes right over. And you can put multiple colors if you want them on here. Oh, that looks so pretty. And I can see that reddish pink color that I used for our spider web peeking right through, so I see my spider web still, which is exactly what I want to see. All right, and I'm going to add some green in here and continue all the way around. I'm going to add that water to where I haven't put water on, just to make sure that it really picks up that color. If you feel like you put too much color on, so with watercolor, what I really love is if I put too much paint on one spot, you can take a dip of more water and go over it again, and it will help kind of spread it out and make sure it doesn't look too purple or red or whatever color you put on. So I'm going to add some more green right over top. And I'm going to spread that out to the ends. And some techniques I've seen is you can add different colors between each little space between your webs if you want to. Today I'm going to be changing colors all the way around, so we have this beautiful Halloween rainbow of a spider web today. All right, so we used some green. I'm going to add in some blues, some dark blues. And I think I need some more water. I forgot to add that part in there. And right now I'm painting over the spot that my spider is on. So I want to make sure that I can see him right through my painting. And it looks like he's peeking through really nicely. So I know our Halloweens are going to look a little different this year, but I still love to decorate my house. Even though I'm a lot older than a kid age, I still love to make arts and crafts that have to do with Halloween and put them up on my windows for all of the trick-or-treaters or visitors or neighbors walking by to see. So this is exactly what you can do if you want with your final project. All right, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit more. I'm going to add some red all the way around. And one final technique that I'm going to show you is one that I really like to do if I just want to add some extra flair to my art projects, especially my watercolor projects. So remember when I mentioned that salt in the beginning? So if you have some salt, I'm going to get this part nice and wet and colored in with this reddish pink color. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make sure it's still wet while I do this. So this will only work if your paint is still wet. Got a little bit of paint on the table. I'll wipe it. So while your paint is still wet, you're going to take some of that salt and take a pinch of it, and you can sprinkle that right over the wet paint that you just put on. So I'm going to take this more of the salt and just really sprinkle it over the parts that I want to add some extra flair. So what the salt does is salt, if you ever eat something that's really salty, it might make you really thirsty. And the reason for that is because salt kind of absorbs a lot of the moisture that's in your mouth. So what this is doing is absorbing a lot of that moisture in the paint and the water that we just put onto our paper. So if you can see, I'll bring it up closer, we have our salt on top of this pink section right here, and it's going to fall off a little bit as I show you. But it's starting to soak up a lot of that pink watercolor color. So you're going to let that dry. So I'm going to continue painting around and add some salt as I go to different parts. And then I'll show you that final effect. It's going to add a really cool look to our paint. So I'm going to finish painting my piece with different colors. Use some orange here, get it nice and wet around. I'm going to add some more water over to the parts that I put too much paint. Ugh, I love this look of our painting so far. It's looking so great. I can't wait to show my friends at home what we can put in our window for Halloween. I'm going to take some more of that salt and sprinkle it on some of the wet parts that I did here and let that dry and soak up all of that paint. Going to finish my painting all the way around, get some more green in here, and get some color. And so you don't have to be a perfect painter when you're making this. You can just go ahead and splatter the paint across if you want to, like the way I'm doing it. Isn't a perfect technique, but this is the way I want my painting to look. To spread out that color and make sure it all has paint across. I'm going to add some extra mix of some colors here and get some bright colors. My watercolor set looks a little crazy right now, but that's how I like to make art, is to make a crazy mess that looks beautiful to me. So I'm going to add the last bit of salt, I think, to this one because it's got really rich colors on it, and I think that salt will really pop. So I'm going to take my next pinch of salt and put that right over that wet paint again and let it soak it up. I'm going to take my last color to fill in that last spot. It's a nice blue. And I might add a different color in there too. So I'm going to leave some of the space white because I like the effect. It kind of looks like tie-dye on my painting here. But as you can see, that crayon that we put on there before is resisting the paint, so it's really shining through as we paint over our artwork. My spider is still showing right here on the side. And I'm going to show you that last effect. So once that salt has dried, I'm going to flip it over and show you the dry spot. But once that salt has dried, you can brush off the salt from where you put it. So brushing off all that salt and making a little bit of a mess, but that's okay. And you'll see that it kind of sucked up a lot of that color and left a really beautiful speckled white and pink and fading color to it. So the salt sucked up a lot of that color and revealed some of the white paper underneath and left a little variation of colors, creating a different texture and look to our painting. All right, and that's how we make our spider web watercolor art piece. Thank you so much for joining me in Art with Alex today. I had so much fun creating this beautiful piece of art for Halloween with you. If you want to join me for more classes, you can go to our website at YMCASF.org and click on Classes for All. I hope to see you there. Bye.
Did you know that YMCA of San Francisco never closed? When shelter-in-place happened, we could no longer provide in-person programming. We quickly shifted to provide youth and family programming virtually. As early as April, we started providing on-demand activities in our YMCA of San Francisco YouTube channel.
For this video, we're going to be making a geodesic dome.
Is the language of numbers.
In addition, we have a regular schedule of activities for our youth and families to join live. We feature read-alouds, yoga, family Zumba, arts and crafts, drawing clubs, and more. So don't miss out on our virtual youth and family offerings. Visit www.ymcasf.org for more info and class schedules.